Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I have with me Dean Alms, CPO of Aravo, a third-party management software solutions company, for a conversation on safeguarding the pharmaceutical supply chain. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Back in July 2023, Pfizer's North Carolina plant was severely damaged by a tornado. Rocky Mount, one of the largest facilities making sterile injectables in the US, was hit by an EF3 power tornado with winds that peaked at more than 150 miles per hour and which wreaked havoc with the roof and the structure of the building. What that extreme weather event highlighted, though, was the need to make adequate supply chain preparations for the seasons in which the planet pulls out all the stops with the worst of its natural disasters. Having a blueprint for supply chain resiliency is critical, as a mature and robust risk program enables the right emergency protocols and drug reserves to be in place in the worst case scenarios and permits plants to return to full operation as speedily as possible. But before we plunge further into this, Dean, perhaps you could share with listeners your journey to today, the passions that drove you to doing what you do at Aravo.
Sure. And thanks again for inviting me to your show. I have been building enterprise applications now for 25 years. And what is really interesting about what we're doing at Aravo is recognizing that the explosion of the extended enterprise with SaaS applications has really created a new set of challenges that companies need to address. The scale of supplier ecosystems are now huge. Most of the large pharmaceutical companies we work with today have over 100,000 suppliers in their supplier ecosystem that they have to manage in one way, shape, or form. And ultimately, the mission of Aravo to help companies thrive in this global economy full of risk and regulations is really what brings my passion about.
Thank you, Dean. So Aravo's cloud-based platform is designed for usability, agility, security, and scale, all crucial words in the life sciences industry, and it delivers a powerful set of capabilities for GRC automation, including a relational data model, document and content management, automated workflow management, and interactive reporting and visualization. More generally, though, Dean, I was wondering if you could explain why these capabilities are critical for pharmaceutical processes when it comes to safeguarding the supply chain, particularly in areas prone to extreme weather events.
Sure. And the way we look at it to simplify all of the capabilities we have is we deal with three macro processes. One is lifecycle management. Two is the due diligence process. And three is providing unified visibility into all of this information. And when we talk about lifecycle management, that is dealing with the high volume of third parties or suppliers that a company has to manage. And so that is everything from intake and segmentation of those suppliers into mission critical to medium critical to no critical types of segmentation, so you know how to manage them. The onboarding process of bringing them on successfully, making sure all your I's are crossed, all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and then continuous monitoring, and then finally offboarding. That's lifecycle management, and it's a huge undertaking for companies. Second is around due diligence. And there's so many different risks that companies need to manage today, whether it's financial viability and legal compliance or legal status, regulatory compliance, data privacy, InfoSec, supply chain resilience, and now ESG and sustainability is becoming more and more important. So there's many, many different areas that they have to address there. And then finally, getting unified visibility into all of this. For the longest time, for the past couple of decades, it has been highly fragmented in many companies. Bringing that together so you can bring up a single company and understand your risk exposure across all those domains is really critically important. That every company that we work with does this a little bit differently. And so one company may start with a certain risk domain, such as InfoSec. Another one may start with another area, And all together, there's different ways to approach this. And so working with companies to understand where their priorities are, where their readiness is a big part of making this successful.
Thank you, Dean, for describing the three macro processes. If we go into the risk management itself, are you able to unpack that a bit more? What are the risk management protocols that should be, that need to be in place as part of farmer safeguarding against supply chain risk in the face of extreme weather events?
Yeah. So when we look at the overall risk approach that companies want to take, we sit down with companies and we do what we call a strategic alignment framework, which is really getting to an understanding of what is their scope and objectives, where are they on the maturity model, what is their org model in terms of addressing this, their blueprint for actually achieving their vision, and then the roadmap to get there, and then finally success metrics associated with that. And when we talk about the scope and objectives, it's really interesting as we work with different companies. Some of them will lean into revenue assurance being a big driver. Others, it's liability avoidance because there is real risk of them having to pay huge fines and legal penalties for doing the wrong thing, if you will. In others, it's brand reputation. And then finally, regulatory compliance. If I look at pharmaceutical, revenue assurance and regulatory compliance generally are the biggest drivers in terms of why they go about managing risk with third party risk management systems like Aravo. And for pharmaceutical, especially, revenue assurance is tied to kind of this social responsibility, this consumer responsibility of making sure that their goods and services are delivered because lives are at stake. When we talk
Absolutely.
about the protocols, there's various ways to look at that, but I think for us there is a series of activities that we help them perform to make sure that they are not only mitigating risk, meaning reducing the chance of that risk occurring, but recognizing that risk will happen. And then what do you do to make sure that you can effectively respond to it? So there's in most cases, many companies are really focused on that, reducing the risk exposure. We see that there is a greater need for responding to risk when it happens. There's always going to be a cyber attack or a ransomware or a hurricane or something as unlikely as a bridge collapse in Baltimore. All of these things are sometimes unpredictable. They're going to happen. And so building up a plan, a record of what you're going to do when it does happen is critically important so you don't make panic decisions when they do occur.
Thank you. So, if we stick with that notion of the unpredictability of these events and protecting against panic, and whether we go into this preemptive mode or the responsive mode, say I'm a chief risk officer, what should be top of my mind when that moment, that extreme weather occurrence arrives and I need to put processes into place?
Yeah, and once again, the when it occurs is hopefully a little bit down the path, and that pre-planning of, okay, if this happens, do I have redundancies? Do I have another supplier that can help me deliver on that, or do I have another plant or manufacturing shop myself that can deliver those same goods and services? And that can also include geographic diversity. If you have a concentration risk in a certain geography and that gets hit by an event, whether it's a weather event or other type of event, you got to make sure there's geographic diversity so it's not going to impact your ability to deliver. Certainly, having backup stock is a big part of the equation, and certainly the pharmaceutical industry has done a great job of that. And then alternative routing, logistics is always a big deal, whether it's a bridge going out or other types of bad weather preventing flights and other transportation. Having alternative routing is a key part of the overall equation. And then finally, just the recovery efforts. When responding and addressing it, you're always going to get all hands on deck to make sure things get delivered on time, but then getting back to normal state and planning that recovery process is critical as well.
Thank you, Dean. So, if we think about these lessons we've been discussing today, What lessons can other industries perhaps learn from the operational resilience of the pharmaceutical industry in this regard?
Yeah, I think, pharmaceutical industry certainly has, set the terms of best practices in terms of resiliency. And a lot of the reason is what I mentioned before. Other industries can claim, relax, we're not saving lives. The pharmaceutical industry can't say that. They are, in many cases, are saving lives with their medicines, their pharmaceutical products. And so they have to be able to deliver on resiliency in a big, big way. So I think other companies can look at their best practices, how they plan for it, how they prep for it, how they make sure that they do have diversity in their supply chain, can go a long way for other companies as well.
Thank you. And finally, what needs to be borne in mind in future to ameliorate processes even more?
Yeah, I think, the way we see this unfolding in the future is how you deliver goods will be as important as what you deliver. And that's a profound statement in the sense that, we've always thought about I'm buying this product and I don't haven't in the past had to worry about how it was produced. But given the global environment and the risks that are associated with it, you've got to make sure that when you are buying a product from one of your suppliers, that they're not employing, human slavery, child labor, that they're not damaging the environment, that they're not having information systems that are unsecure that could cripple you. So there's all of these things that have to be brought to bear on how you deliver your goods and services, not just what you deliver. And so you're going to need increasing transparency and accountability for that. The way we describe it is you will continue to be held accountable for the sins of your suppliers. And so if you don't manage that, if you don't manage that transparency and that accountability, it can come back to bite you in a big way. We certainly see AI playing a big, big role in terms of taking us to the next level. And we're certainly working and investing in making that happen. So I think the future is will increasingly look at supply chains because we build such an enormous extended enterprise with many of our industries out there that the supply chains will be increasingly important in terms of how we coordinate them and how we deliver transparency and accountability, not just with your third parties, but with your nth parties as well.
Thank you, Dean. It's been a pleasure.
And so that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous instalments at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and pretty much wherever you get your other podcasts. Just search for pharmaphorum and press subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us as well on X or Twitter and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.